All right, guys, it's 11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. So first off, I'm Ethan Perkins, project manager and engineer for Belzona Houston. I'll be the one performing the webinar today. Be sure to, when you log on, if you could send to the chat your name, company name, and email, please, so we can send you your credit hours for it. Let's go ahead and get started. So the title is Concrete Evidence of Belzona. On this, we're going to see a few different things of what we can do with concrete, not just the actual concrete repair products we have, but also doing some coating to it as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So on our agenda, we'll talk about a little bit of the performance evidence of the concrete repair materials. We'll talk about some of the rebuild products. We'll go over some of the composite repairs we can do, some wraps, patches, things like that. We'll also talk about a little bit of concrete weatherproofing, and then we'll wrap it up with some chalking, grouting, and shimming of bases and other things like that. So first off, we'll start off with a little video here in the next slide. It's just going to kind of introduce you to a wide range of our concrete products and a little bit of what they can do.
Concrete is the most widely used construction material in the world. As a consequence, concrete damage and deterioration are perhaps the biggest problems encountered by buildings and structures. From floors and steps to walls and roofs, the effects of damage are clear to see across multiple areas.
Don't know why it's stopping there.
But is more concrete really the answer? As an alternative to like-for-like repairs, Belzona offers a variety of polymeric mortar repair and protection solutions. These materials offer superior application and performance benefits. In this video, we put some of these to the test. For vertical or overhead applications, concrete is impossible to apply and cure without the use of formers and shuttering. Instead, Belzona's materials can repair the damaged area with minimal support and fully cure without any shuttering. For example, this high-build concrete repair material will not sag, even when applied thickly on vertical or overhead surfaces. The lasting quality of Belzona is better too. All of Belzona's mortar repair systems demonstrate excellent levels of adhesion, even on vertical and overhead surfaces. In fact, Belzona adheres so well that it's stronger than the cohesive strength of concrete. Lightweight properties also make Belzona superior to like-for-like concrete repairs. When fully cured, Belzona's low-density polymeric system weighs significantly less than the equivalent volume of concrete. Lighter materials make applications easier and quicker. Even light pedestrian traffic can result in deterioration over time. Yet concrete areas featuring heavy-duty vehicles can be prone to higher levels of wear. Belzona can prevent this problem from reoccurring with rebuild materials that provide long-term resistance to both abrasion and impact. Loading bays and storage areas make excellent examples where these solutions have proved beneficial. Whether exposed to the environment or aggressive chemical contact, Belzona's concrete repair composites are non-porous and do not absorb water or chemicals. This makes them ideally suited to areas subject to chemical attack. In fact, Belzona's range of mortar repair materials and coatings are capable of resisting some of the strongest acids and alkalis used across industries, even at high temperatures. For each application area and service environment, Belzona offers a superior solution to repairing and protecting damaged concrete. And as demonstrated, you can be guaranteed that these benefits will come as standard. Visit belzona.com for more information.
So y'all see that video gave you a pretty good introduction to the range of product rebuild, of concrete rebuild and coatings that we can do with Belzona. So right here, we're just going to kind of get into the rebuilding stage of it. So you have your 4100 series. Our staple is the Belzona 4111 that we'll talk about a little bit. And then also you have several others, just depending on what you need, if it's overhead or need it chemically resistant. So we'll just keep on going here. Here's some of the evidence portion that we were talking about on our main slide. So this is some of our characteristics of Belzona 4111. So this is the main concrete rebuild we like to use. The best thing about it is it's high compressive strength. It's well above 10,000 PSI. It has great chemical resistance. It also sets up extremely quick. Typically, you're able to walk on it in 3 to 4 hours. You're almost able to just drive on it in less than 16 most of the time in these weather conditions. So it does set up a lot quicker than normal concrete, where normal concrete would take typically 28 days to be able to be fully compressive. So over here is a little bit of the adhesion we have of it. Your tensile shear is typically around 2,700 PSI, which is superior to anything concrete wise on the market. Also, you'll notice our pull-offs that we have there, dry and wet concrete. So this can be applied to damp concrete, just won't get as much of a performance, but it still can be applied to it if it's damp. But you'll notice the lower numbers on the right. And the reason they're that low is because the concrete actually broke, as you saw in the video on these dolly pull-off tests. Typically, it's much greater than that if we try to do it on a metal or something better prep that can hold up to the pulls. So once again, our compressive property is typically 13,000 PSI, which most concretes between 2,500 to 3,000 for high PSI concrete. So there's just many different things we can do with this. Not just typical rebuild of concrete damage, but we can also do some anchor bolts, rebuild pump basins. We also do this on some steel repairs as well. So another issue that we see with just regular concrete is it's not very good with chemicals. So this is just a little study we've done and an example of a basic sump here that's seeing HCl acid. So you can see the concrete did have some damage to it. This picture is obviously after it's been started to be chipped out a little bit. So what happened was they installed a new sump box, and we used the Belzona concrete materials, 4111, to pour along the void areas of the box and the edges. And then 4311, which is actually a staple acid resistant coating we have that's mainly for concrete, but can be put on anything, was applied for the chemical protection. So you'll see here's a picture during the actual 4111 portion where you can see the edges were seamed in with 4111 after it was poured. And you can notice it gets really smooth as well. So it's not something that you're going to have difficulty making look good or getting flush with the existing floors. And here's our coating of 4311. And like I said, this is a highly acid resistant coating that can handle a broad range of acids that the concretes may see, not just for sumps, but for the containments as well. And then we'll move in here. This is just another example for especially larger areas. This is a big cooling tower basin. So you can see the sump and also the columns inside had a lot of erosion just from being in use over the years. It happens with regular concrete. So what we did, we took 4111, filled in all the erosion areas on the columns, as you can see. And 4111 can hang vertically as well, but there are other products we have that can hang up to 3 to 4 inches thick vertically without falling. So we can talk about those as well. But here you can kind of see where everything was rebuilt flush, and it also gives it a little bit better protection than just going back with standard concrete. So the 5811, which is also another coating that we like to use to protect concrete, was given to it after all the rebuild was finished. And this is the final picture, as you can see. Much better looking, and also it'll be much more erosion resistant in the future. So it'll last a lot longer than it did to begin with. I know we kind of talked about the last slide, the vertical rebuild. So this is the 4141. Basically, it is a lighter weight version of 4111. It can be held about 3 to 4 inches vertically. So anytime you see situations like this where you need to do rebuilds and you don't want to use a former like you would the old school way with concrete, this is a very easy way to do it without using the forms. So this is just an example here. You see the spalling led to the deterioration, always down to the rebar here. So what they did, came in here, used Belzona 4141 to form it. As you can see, there's no actual former that needs to be poured. There was a small former set to the bottom, as you can see, just to give it a good straight line. Not really to hold it up, but it'll give it a nice, good flush line. So at the end, you can see the final result here. So like I said, the main characteristic of this 4141 is it just stops you from having to use your formers, which especially on, larger buildings where concrete chips happen 60, 70 feet in the air, it's pretty difficult to get up there with a man lift, make the former, mix up the concrete, and then go back up there and pour it. When all you have to do is just put it on without the form. So that's another application we've seen it used very frequently for. This is just another example of the 4141. This was a tank support. You can see the damaged concrete ended up getting pretty hefty. So they just came in, chiseled all the loose concrete out, and then this was no power tools needed or allowed. So we came in, minimal prep, used the high build 4141 to rebuild everything. Here you can kind of see another picture once everything was loose and torn out. As you can see, a lot of damage, especially in an area like this. It'd be extremely hard, nearly impossible for regular concrete to be used to rebuild this. So the 4141 was used to get it all built back flush. And then the Belzona 5811 was coated back over it for 2 coats to give it a little further support and give it more chemical resistance. So once again, no forming was needed. And also it was extremely easy compared to having to do this with regular concrete. So I'm going to kind of switch gears here. Instead of going for just regular concrete repairs, we'll talk about some of the composite repairs we have, such as wraps and patches for concrete. It can restore the strength of the deteriorated concrete. We can also retrofit a sound structural member of the concrete to help with increased loads. We've done that several times. And also it helps the concrete not be as brittle. Especially you'll see in the next few slides, a lot of concrete lined piping loves to become brittle over the years. So you'll see kind of what we did in a few of these to help restore that. So it can also help columns resist buckling. And like I said, we can wrap these with concrete lined pipes to help with pressure retention. So a lot of the ways we do this are composite resins that you'll see in the next few slides. So like on this one, this was one of the concrete pipes we were talking about. This was in a cooling water line that was delivering cooling water to the plant, as you can see. So there were several areas with the cracks, and typically what happens when the steel lining inside fails, it ends up popping through in many different places on these concrete lines. It's one of the flaws of that design. So we actually used our Belzona Super Wrap 2, which is a carbon fiber and fiberglass mixture with the high composite resins to basically wrap this pipe and give it a better leak containment. As you can see here, we've actually used some of our rebuilding materials on the seam to get a smooth substrate to wrap, make sure there's no good air pockets in there. And this is the first layer of the resin being wetted out. And this is it. It's got a compression film on it right now to keep it compressed so it can cure as tight as possible. But right there, it just restored its integrity, especially along that joint, to where it can go back to being in service without having issues of leaking underground. This is just another example, fiberglass repair that we did. So we used it to basically reinforce this column. And you'll see in the next picture that we used our mortar grade products, Belzona 4141, to rebuild this area and give it some structural reinforcement. And that's just an after picture of it. So right before this will be wrapped is what it'll look like underneath once the rebuild's complete. And then we come in with our fiberglass sheeting reinforced with our Belzona resins to give it a wrap and give back some of that structural reinforcement. And it doesn't have to just be certain types of resins. There are many different resins we have that can be incorporated into this fiberglass and carbon fiber mixture. So depending on what you need, chemical wise, we have it. So just don't think of it as confined to certain few resins. With just about all the ones we have can be reinforced and used to coat, reinforce the concrete. So this is just another example right here of our, like an FRP reinforcement. This is our Super Wrap 2. Like I said, 70% fiberglass, 30% carbon fiber. So the fiberglass makes the application easier, and it also has the thermal expansion that's very close to concrete, and it's got a little good impact resistance. But the carbon fiber portion of this gives it more tensile strength and gives it more resistance to the creep and fatigue failure that you often see, especially with non-carbon fiberglass repairs to concrete. So the resin and the coatings will improve the durability and chemical resistance. Like I said, especially if you're seeing acids, we can always coat our repairs with something that's more acid resistant or caustic resistant, just depending on what you need. So we'll go here and switch gears now to weatherproofing and waterproofing concrete. So a lot of times you don't just need to rebuild it. A lot of times you have to waterproof it as well, especially multi-story buildings, cooling towers, things of that nature. So this one just happens to be a concrete roof joint that water is getting into a chemical storage containment underneath, which is a big uh-oh. So on this one, we use what's called Belzona 3111, which is a membrane that we use to coat roofs and also coat over joints, etc., to prevent ingress from rainwater and weather. So it's a one component product, very easy to put down, and it's also flexible, waterproof, and weathering resistant. Here you'll see some examples of it. They're putting down a conditioner right now. The 3111 needs a conditioner to adhere to the concrete. That's what they're doing at the moment. So in the next slide, you'll see putting the first coat down and laying the cloth or Belzona 9311 into it to give it that reinforcement to stop the water from getting back through into that containment area beneath. And here you'll see the top coat going on. And like I said, this was a extremely fast, extremely quick repair, and it's weatherproof the following day. So this is just one of the things to think about, not just for using us as concrete repairs, but we also do the waterproofing as well. So on this next slide, you'll start to see another example of the waterproof. This is another roof that had leaking issues, but this one had a little more concrete damage to it. So we actually used that 4141 we talked about in the beginning. You can kind of see the lighter gray spots on the concrete seam where the pitting was occurring and the damage, and we actually filled all that back in flush. On this one, we used a little different product called 3121, which is for short terms, a stronger version of the 3111. And this one can also go down very quickly. And this one is actually almost instantly waterproof. It's used in many emergency style situations where we've done it before, where it's actually raining and the roof begins to leak during the rain. People have went up and laid it down and immediately sealed the leak while it was still raining. So like I said, that's one of the great characteristics of the 3121, and it's used on concrete all over the world. And just diving a little bit more into waterproofing, this is another area that people tend to forget about sometimes that we can do. So this is a multi-story hospital, and this was the interface of the wall and the floor. Both were made of concrete and tile. So they're leaking into the further rooms below, causing issues. A lot of times in these hospitals, you know, you might have a floor leaking into a room below that has millions of dollars worth of equipment that cannot get wet, or medicines, things like that. So when this happens, it's usually a pretty hot item for them. So we'll come in and we'll do the same thing we just showed. We'll come in and rebuild with 4111 or 4124, whatever concrete product we need. And then we'll come in with the 3121 to seal the floor and wall interfaces, as well as sometimes the entire floor. And you'll see here in the before and afters how we come and do that. You'll see we're reinforcing the sides of that wall right there. That way no further water egresses into this. And you'll actually notice that that's actually FRP lining on that wall that we're able to stick to. As long as we can roughen it up with Belzona 3121, it should stick to it. And this is just another example of one of the many things we can do with our concrete repairs and coating materials as far as waterproofing goes. So I'm going to wrap this up with talking just a little bit about the chalking and grouting that we can do. So that's going to be our 7000 series and a little bit of our 4111 as well. So our 7111 and 7211 are more of a grouting materials. The 7111 is more for the precision alignment, such as pump bases, things of that nature. It also has extremely high compressive strength, as you can see, 30,000 PSI. And it's also quick curing, 12 hours, depending on temperature. And it's very vibration resistant. So the grout, also the 7211, has a little more lower exotherm. So it lets you get a little deeper pour, 8 inches thick at a time. Very often we compete with grouts similar to this. A lot of times you can only pour 2 to 3 inches at a time before you have to let it cook off and then re-pour. So with ours, you get to get a little thicker pour. And it's also very high compressive strength, 13,000 PSI in 24 hours. And these are all solvent free. Now, the reason we stuck 4111 in here on this section, you guys saw it at the beginning. It's kind of like a moon sand consistency. You can actually add a little more of the mixing resins that come with it. Well, you can buy that separately and add it in there and thin it out to make it a more pourable grout, which we have done many times in the past as well. And it'll still give you a very high PSI and quick curing grout that you can use for many different applications. You can even use it to self-level the floor. We've done that before as well. So just wanted to throw that one in there for y'all. This is just a little example of our chalking. This is 7111 going in on a pump motor base. And like I said, it gives you that precision alignment. It helps you not misalign. I was a millwright in my past, so I know exactly how damaging misalignment can be, especially when pump bases get off. So this is just another thing to keep in your tool belt. Here's a little after picture of it at the very bottom. And this was, once again, a very quick cure, very quick process. And this is going to be the example of that fluid version of 4111 I was talking about, once you add a little extra resin to it. So this is a crusher out of mine, caused the concrete base to crack and eventually start having further issues. So once again, all the loose and damaged concrete was removed. Everything was prepped properly and conditioned. And then this Belzona 4111 that was thinned out with extra resin, as you can see, was poured in there to create that self-leveling mixture that I talked about. And here's the after picture of it. So once again, that's just another thing that, you know, not everybody knows about. And I want y'all to keep that in your tool belt when y'all have issues like this, especially on your floors, or if you need something pourable to fix a piece of equipment concrete wise. Then we'll talk about the anchor bolts to wrap everything up here. So this is basically the fluid version of the 4111 I've talking about several times in each slide here. So we're able to actually pull the anchor bolts out, re-prep everything, and pour a grout back in. As you can see here, it's very liquidy consistency, very fluid-like, to reset all these anchor bolts. And once again, full mechanical hardness in 16 hours. That's extremely fast compared to most concrete products out there. This is it when it went back into service. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap up with a quick video just kind of highlighting the anchor bolt repairs. And then after that, we'll have a little Q&A session. And if anybody's got any questions, just let us know. Like I said, that just highlighted the anchor bolt repairs and also kind of showed you a video of how fluid you can make that 4111 in case you ever need to do something like this. Like I said, we've done it from pouring anchor bolts to pouring foundations that need to be self-leveled, to also fixing large areas of floor that need to be re-leveled and built up, you know, quarter of an inch, half an inch. It just depends on what you need. But I just wanted to kind of hit on that a little more in depth because a lot of people don't seem to notice that. We can actually thin that product out to give it a more pourable consistency if you need that. So I appreciate everybody coming out. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask or anything that they might have need a little more in depth on before we wrap this up? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming out. Once again, make sure to send your name, company, and email to the chat box so we can get you your credits, and we'll see you on the next one.